tell me what a pet owner should do if their pet gets bitten by a snake, dog or cat.
Yeah, definitely. So, anytime a pet encounters a snake bite, you are not going to know which snakes are venomous usually and which aren't. I've definitely even had pets come in where like they never found the snake, they just know that there's swelling going on. So, we always tell people if your pet gets bit by a snake, first thing, definitely get yourself to a veterinary hospital. If Firehouse is open, we will see emergencies, so you can come into us even if something like dramatic like that has happened. We'll make sure that the snake bite is not going to affect them long term. Try to figure out if there's any kind of medications that we need to administer at that time. Sometimes they need antivenin depending on the type of snake bite. And a snake bite can result in your pet's death. So we want to just make sure that we're treating that like an emergency, get them in, make sure that we're doing everything we need to do to get them taken care of. In the event that your pet is bit by a snake, definitely call us, give us a heads up that you're on your way. We want to see you right away, so we'll definitely make sure that there's a doctor available and be prepared for when you get there.
Should pet owners apply ice, do a tourniquet?
I would probably not worry about any of those things if you don't have the supplies there, and I don't know how helpful that would be. So the most important thing is to call your nearest firehouse and let them know that you're coming and just head that way.
Is it usually, do you normally see cats that are bit or dogs that are bitten by a snake?
Great question. It's usually dogs. Usually dogs are going on hikes, they're getting into ponds, and so they're most likely to end up encountering a snake. Occasionally we'll get like an outdoor cat that maybe encounter one, but it's more like a dog thing. Yeah, for sure.
Good to know.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to spring allergies.
Okay.
What should pet owners think about when it comes to their dogs and cats and spring allergies?
So Austin is the allergy hub of the world, I feel like. Allergies here are something that we see almost every single day, and in the springtime, things ramp up and get a lot worse. Usually the first sign that you see is like itchy paws, itchy bodies. Sometimes they start shaking their head because their ears start bothering them. And you want to try and get on these allergies as soon as you can because can escalate really quickly. And you end up with things like hot spots, infections, really bad ear infections. And it can get to a really expensive treatment plan really quickly. So if we get on these symptoms when they're just starting and the itch isn't so bad, sometimes we can intervene a little bit sooner and get ahead of those allergies and prevent them from ever getting to that really miserable place where they're starting to cause wounds because they're so itchy.
It's all year round, or just now? Can we remove them from
From the
the
allergies.
allergens?
Yeah. So I totally can get into maintenance stuff.
Okay.
So for both dogs and cats, the allergens are typically in the environment. And that can be year round. Sometimes talk to your veterinarian because if you are seeing year round allergies with no seasonality to it, meaning that like you're not seeing it increase in the spring and during different times of the year, it could be a food allergy, something that would affect them year round if they're constantly ingesting it. So chat with your veterinarian if you're not sure. With environmental allergies, there's usually this seasonality, we call it, to those allergies. And you'll find that during different times of the year, they get more itchy, they have more issues with their skin and their ears. And that's when we start thinking it's more environmental allergy related. The pollen is all in the environment, in the air, it gets on the fur and the skin, and it starts that initial allergy reaction. So one of the first things we'll talk about with maintenance is bathing. That is hard in cats sometimes, but especially in dogs, it can be a first line maintenance therapy to kind of get ahead of the allergies. And if that's not taking care of it, then chat with your veterinarian about different modalities to kind of help maintain a non-itchy dog during their normal itchy seasons.
All right, let's talk about flowers now that we've talked about allergies.
Yeah.
Easter lilies and other poisonous flowers. What should pet owners know, both dog owners and cat owners?
So lilies are extremely toxic to our pets, and specifically with cats. It causes pretty severe organ damage, and they can die from lily ingestion. Even them just brushing up against a lily, if they were to groom that off their coat, could cause organ damage. So they're very sensitive to that particular flower. And Easter's coming up, it's springtime, maybe you're getting a bouquet from your loved one. I know I got one recently and it had lilies in it, so we had to put it outside. But it's a really beautiful flower that lots of people try to get for their loved ones. And it's just something to keep in mind that if you have cats, specifically cats in your household, it is extremely toxic, and even the water that they sit in can cause really bad damage to their bodies. So you just want to remove it and have it somewhere where the cats have zero access to it. Even on a high shelf, I would still be worried that if a petal fell, they would have access to it. So just keeping it out of your household is probably the safest bet. In dogs, the flowers and plants that are most toxic to them that we see in Texas often are going to be outside usually. The big three that we think about all the time are sago palms, oleander, and lantana. Sago palms are those like palm tree looking ones that people will have ornamental in their beds, and any part of that is toxic to the dog and can cause organ failure and death. Oleander is another pretty toxic plant that's common in Texas because it's also drought resistant. It's kind of bush-like. You can look these up on the internet to see if you have these in your yards or in your gardens at home. And then the last one is lantana or ham and eggs. And they're really pretty. They are all over the place here in Texas, also because they're drought resistant. Cause more of like GI upset. And I had a dog that would always get into lantana. So for whatever reason, it's kind of tasty, I guess. So just things to keep in mind if you see these that are out in your yard or in places that you're visiting to try to avoid those with your dog.
All right, so we have an eclipse, a big eclipse coming up in Austin on April 8th. Do pet owners need to be worried about the eclipse affecting their cat or dog?
So the eclipse itself is not of any concern for your pets. They don't really know that the eclipse is happening, even though it's really exciting for us. If the biggest thing I would think is if there are people out like having a great time watching the eclipse, you just want to make sure that your pets are safe and leashed and out. If we're going to be out in the dark watching the moon, you want to just make sure that you're in a safe area for them to be out with you, or just put them up so they're not, in the chaos of having a great time while we're watching the eclipse.
Let's talk about how to keep our pets safe in the summer heat. What are some quick tips that pet owners should remember as we head into May and June with dogs and cats?
Great question, and something really good to revisit each year. The big things I think about are make sure you have water on hand. If you're going to go out hiking, especially here in Austin, there's all these great places to go, and just make sure you have clean, fresh access to water for you and your pet. Shade access, you don't want to be out in the sun too long. And then the one that I think sometimes we forget is if we're on concrete and you can't leave your hand on the concrete because it's too hot for your pet. And it doesn't take much heat out there to make the concrete an untouchable space for your pet's paws. So we worry about like burns on the bottom of the feet if they're on really, really hot concrete like that. So just keep that in mind. You can get shoes if you are going to be on hot surfaces for your dogs and just get them trained to wear those. But ideally avoiding that like peak temperature in the middle of the day and just not being on hot concrete that's been baking in the sun, and just try to be mindful of that. So late afternoon walks when the sun's maybe gone down, early morning before the concrete has had a chance to really heat up.
Those are great tips. Thank you. What about doggy sunscreen? Is that really a thing?
I think your dog's probably going to try to lick it off if you put it on there, and they've got a really nice fur coat. I've totally seen some dogs who like burn on their nose and stuff, and I think if you can find one that is safe for pets, that might be the only place I've seen a dog get sunburned. But hopefully they're not out in the sun long enough that they can get a sunburn, and most of their body should be protected by their super cute fur coats.